Menopause, cortisol, and sugar are not making you fat. I'm happy to report, and I'm going to explain to you why I feel this way in this conversation. All right, so you already know I talk to women all day, every day, and these women are generally looking to lose weight. They're generally highly frustrated because they don't know what to do, and they're overwhelmed and confused by all the misinformation and overwhelm in the health and wellness industry. And these women are also at a certain age. They might be in their late 40s or in their 50s or even in their early 60s. They are well and truly Generation X, as am I. And I know what it's like for my peers to come into this stage of life, and we have all these beliefs and programming about how we're supposed to look because we grew up in the thin era. By the way, I have a whole podcast series about the specific hurdles that Generation X women have to face when they start aging. Oh my gosh, it's going to blow your mind. It's huge. So it's going to be like a 5-part series, but that's for later. So you just wait right there, baby, on the edge of your seat. Okay, so these women will say, what used to work in my 30s has stopped working suddenly. Now, what worked in their 30s was watching what they eat, probably having salad with chicken and the dressing on the side and doing cardio and all this bullshit dieting behavior that we really have normalized. We really, 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 as a generation, have normalized restricting food and exercising in a kind of a punishing way. And we think that works. It seems to work until it stops working. It stops working in around our mid-40s. And that is not because of menopause. That is because of a little bit of metabolic mismanagement in your 30s. So overtraining, overexerting, undereating, crash dieting, being on the wagon, off the wagon, restricting and binging. This is all metabolic mismanagement. You slide into your mid-40s with some metabolic wear and tear that catches up to you in your mid-40s. Those bricks were laying in your 30s. I'm not saying this to blame you because I would never do that. I'm not a tough love girly. I'm a soft love girly. I'm just telling it like it is because I was there too. Oh, it used to work. What used to work? Doing 2 hours of spin classes every day and eating salads? That was never going to work. Your body just put up with it for a decade. And now in your 40s, it's got other things to deal with, like menopause, which I will talk about. And it's like, no, we're out. So I really do believe that what we see when we come into our mid-40s, this sudden weight gain, it's not sudden at all because weight doesn't gain suddenly. You don't gain body fat suddenly. It's a really slow biological process to put body fat away into storage. By the way, it's also slow on the way out. It's a slow process to get body fat out of storage, which is why you have to be really patient when you're on a weight loss journey. Okay? The feeling, though, is that it happened suddenly, and it happened at the time when many of us are going through menopause or perimenopause. And so we put those 2 and 2 together and we say, ever since I started going through menopause, I started gaining weight. Or interestingly, because before, even just 5 years ago, when myself and my immediate peers were in our early 40s, the narrative was, ever since I turned 40, I've been gaining weight. And now that we're in our late 40s, it's ever since I hit perimenopause, I've been gaining weight. What are we going to say next? What are we going to blame it on next? Why don't we actually be solutions oriented about this and really figure out what has broken down here? Why would turning 40 or entering perimenopause make you, quote unquote, suddenly gain fat? So I just want you to do this kind of critical thinking. That's why I do these conversations, not because I'm trying to be contrarian or tough love you. It's because I want you to think and understand your body. This is honestly the gift that keeps on giving. Okay, when you get into menopause and we get that loss of estrogen, starts to be kind of chaotic, and then eventually it starts to diminish. What we're recently learning is that there's a lot of sort of different body systems that are affected by the loss of estrogen because there's estrogen receptors on every cell in our body, which is fascinating to know. So one of the downstream effects of the loss of estrogen is that our cells become slightly resistant to the hormone insulin. Insulin resistance. If that phrase means anything to you, if you've heard it, sometimes I think that phrase gets a little overused too, but I'm trying to keep myself organized here. I can't get on all my soapboxes today, my friends. I got to keep it tight. So anyways, insulin resistance essentially describes a state where your cells of your body are resistant to this hormone that is trying to put fuel in to get your cells to use this fuel. So if you want to burn fuel in your cells, insulin's the hormone that brings the fuel to the cells so you can burn it. This could not be more simplistic language, but we're going to keep it like kindergarten puppet show type level of intelligence here, just to keep it simple. Now, When the cells become resistant to insulin because of the loss of estrogen, then insulin has no choice, in a manner of speaking, but to keep fuel away in storage. Sometimes insulin is wrongfully implicated as a fat storage hormone. It's not a fat storage hormone, it's a fuel partitioning hormone. It puts the fuel in the cells to burn it, or it stores it away as fat. It's moving fuel in and out of storage. Insulin is a fuel partitioning hormone. Yes, it decides where fuel goes, but it's inaccurate to call it a fat storing hormone. That's one of its many jobs. And, quite honestly, I'm going to bat here for hormones, who I think get a really bad rap. Hormones don't just do one thing, and hormones are never evil. Like, to call insulin a fat storing hormone automatically frames it as an evil hormone trying to ruin your life. That doesn't exist in your body. There's no hormone in your body trying to ruin your life. It will store fat. If it can't get the fat to get burned in your cells as fuel for energy, then yeah, the fuel will go into storage. It has to go somewhere. Insulin just has to put it somewhere. So if your cells become resistant to insulin, it's just more likely that the insulin's going to put the fuel into storage. Now, menopause can kick off a mild cascade of insulin resistance. But insulin resistance is and always has been pretty damn fixable. But here's the catch. My hunch is you came into menopause already a little insulin resistant. Now, we have statistics to back this up. There is a statistic from the CDC that says that 88% of adult Americans has one or more of the syndromes associated with what's known as metabolic syndrome. And it could be waist circumference, it could be hypertension, high LDL cholesterol, insulin resistance. 88% of Americans has one or more of these factors of metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome is this cluster of things that is leading into the cascade of chronic health issues and diseases that are really taking humans out by the millions every year and increasing, unfortunately, year over year. 88% of Americans has one of these factors. And another statistic is that 80% of American adults who are insulin resistant don't even know it. So insulin resistance, I think, is really fascinating. It seems to me that it's a bit of a sneaky scourge. It sort of sneaks up on you and it won't show up in a blood test. Okay, your doctor might test your HbA1c, hemoglobin A1c. This is a test that's commonly used to determine whether or not you're becoming insulin resistant. But the thing is that there's a normal range, and then there's a slightly abnormal range and a very abnormal range. And as long as you're in the normal range, your doctor's not going to flag it for you. And when I was younger, I went to the doctor in my 30s because I was having these symptoms, which I want to get into in a second here. I was having these symptoms, and she ran a blood test, and I was pre-diabetic all of a sudden. No. Crew. I didn't suddenly become pre-diabetic. I just suddenly became aware of my prediabetes because I had these symptoms that had mounted for years that took me to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh, you're pre-diabetic." But if I had clued into those symptoms earlier, I might have caught it before it got to be pre-diabetes. I could have pulled it back. I did pull it back, so it's fine. It all worked out. But the thing is, I'd had those symptoms for years. And a woman in her freaking 30s, me in my 30s, thought this must just be because I'm getting old. There's no way in hell I was old. But the symptoms I was experiencing were astonishing hunger, just hangry. If I went longer than 2 hours without eating, I would get like very nauseated and anxious, and I'd need to find something to eat. It was just hangry. I had no energy. Like, I could not function. I call it like feeling checked out of life. I for sure had no mental acuity. At the time, I was a writer. That was my job. So I needed a lot of mental acuity. I needed to write. And I couldn't write. I couldn't even do my job. I couldn't think of words. I couldn't say words. Struggling to articulate words. Because at the time, I was a fitness instructor. And sometimes I'd get on the microphone and I would be garbled. You couldn't understand what I was trying to say. I couldn't get the words out. My mental acuity was failing me. I was feeling kind of stupid. I was so tired, I couldn't stay awake at work. I couldn't stay awake at my job. How are you supposed to get ahead in life? I mean, I'm already a woman. I've already got that working against me. And also now I can't stay awake. And I'm a writer. It was a big cascade of shittiness, quite honestly. I was also putting on abdominal fat rapidly. And I am not an abdominal fat shaped person. So this is something you're probably going to resonate with. People will often say, women will say to me, I'm putting on abdominal fat. That's not normal for me. Now, some of us have kind of maybe the more apple-shaped body, but some of us don't. I don't. I'm what we might call a mesomorph. I'm straight up and down, curveless. I'm fine with it. I lose no sleep over it. It's fine. But like maybe I'm more lean, muscular, athletic build. I don't put belly fat on. It was never a place where I'd put fat on. Quite honestly, I'd never been fat before, so I don't know where I put fat on. I was super hypervigilant about fighting against my fat in my 20s and in my 30s, and actually even since my teens, because I'm a Gen X woman and I was born into the thin beauty ideal. And I've been fighting that since I was probably 15 years old, whether I knew it or not. And this is a little bug I want to plant into your head, which is you think it was easy to maintain your weight up until you got into 40s, but you were grinding because you're a Gen X woman and all you've ever known is salads and cardio. So that's actually not easy. That's actually a ton of work you've been putting in. It's just that work stopped working. My hunch is because you've sort of mismanaged your metabolism by doing that, and now you've slid into your 40s with some wear and tear metabolically. Maybe the symptoms I shared with you, fatigue, cravings, hunger, abdominal fat, maybe those resonate with you, because I know I hear that on the phone. You better damn believe that I'm trying to get into that when I'm interviewing potential clients on the phone. Tell me about your cravings. Tell me about your energy. Tell me about how you feel when you get home from work. Oh, I need a snack and I need a nap. Oh, I'm just putting it together. Tell me where the body fat is showing up on your body. Oh, right around your midsection. Oh, your trunk is thickening. Girl, been there, done that. That is just the symptoms of mild insulin resistance. And the good news is that's fixable. Now, if that's been kind of cropping up slowly, mildly, maybe imperceptibly, maybe you've increased a pant size here and there in your late 30s. It's slow, but you weren't really noticing it. And then all of a sudden you get into your 40s and it seems like it happened overnight. Possibly the menopause transition exacerbated existing insulin resistance. If you'd gotten that handled earlier, the insulin resistance, then you might cruise into menopause and not have any issue with it, which is what my story is. Just so we're clear, I solved my own insulin resistance in my 30s, got it very, very well managed, really doubled down on getting my metabolic health just purring like a kitten. Now I'm in my menopause transition. I'm having the requisite changes hormonally, and I'm not gaining weight. I'm not putting on abdominal fat because I solved that problem up front. I have shared in previous episodes that my HbA1c is climbing slowly. That's concerning to me. I'm not rolling over and accepting that, but that's probably the consequence of the menopause transition. That slight little insulin resistance is trying to show up again is probably a consequence of my menopause transition, but I can pull that back. I got control. I did it once before. I can do it again. It's actually easy to do. It's actually really easy to do. And if you had done it 10 years ago, maybe you wouldn't be struggling right now, but don't worry, because the second best time to do something about it is right now. You can solve this problem. Mild insulin resistance, which does not show up in a blood test, but does show up symptomatically, the symptoms that you're complaining of, what used to work doesn't work anymore. It's very fixable with some just diet and lifestyle interventions. But I need you to know that menopause didn't cause that, because here's why I need you to know that. That positions you as a victim to whom something has just happened and you have no agency over it. And I don't love that for you. Do not accept that. You have way more control over how you show up in your body and how you feel in your body than you think you do. If we say, oh, it's menopause, then we're accepting it, we're rolling over. And by the way, you might be ready to do that. You might be exhausted from a life of dieting, because that's actually the frustrating part for Gen X women who are currently going through menopause. It's like, we freaking dieted since we were teenagers. Are you kidding me? Not us. We're the professional dieters. We've been doing this since our moms dragged us to Weight Watchers when we were 12 years old because she couldn't get a babysitter. Not us. We know how to diet. We know how to keep ourselves thin and lean. We've been doing this our whole lives. It seems very unfair that we women, the current crop of women going through menopause, are the ones who are struggling with this belly fat gain because we fought it tooth and nail for our whole lives. And you might be saying, no, I didn't, but I think you did. I just think you did. This is just the programming we were brought up in, and it's so pervasive in our programming that we're not even able to see it. We're unconsciously competent at dieting. Gen X women do not eat normally. We eat little stupid bird-like meals of food, and then we snack and binge in the evenings because we're starving and wonder why we can't keep our weight under control. We don't know how to eat normally. Honestly, eating normally is a really good first step on the path to resolving your insulin resistance, because I've used this phrase, metabolic wear and tear, super unscientific language, but I'm not a scientist and neither are you. You're a human being having a lived experience in your body. I think using this kind of simple language is helpful. The metabolic wear and tear that honestly you applied and created in your body was from kind of doing dumb diet shit. like kind of just under eating, undernourishing, having slim fast shakes or collagen coffees and salads with chicken and just eating these little undernourishing bits of food and little snacky poos and just like dribbling meager nutrition into your body for literal decades. And your body's like, what the hell is going on here? It's hoarding time. I'm not saying this is a starvation mode thing, but it's just a wear and tear. What else was your body going to do? For how many more decades did you think your body was going to put up with that? So you come into this change of life and it seems like all of a sudden you've gained weight, but it was not sudden. This has been building and percolating for probably the better part of 10 or 20 years, but it's totally fixable. I don't want you blaming menopause. It's not why you're getting fat. It might be contributing, but the metabolic root cause, this mild insulin resistance, which 88% of Americans may have and 80% of them might not know they have it, is probably underpinning. Now, just to close the loop, my footnotes. Insulin is not an evil hormone. It's not a hormone that's going to make you fat. It's not its job. Its job is not to make you fat. It's a perfectly beautiful, amazing hormone that wants to put fuel where you need it. But you've just been sending the message in for decades that this has to now go into storage. It's just storage time now. Well, we can solve this problem. Insulin is not bad. You don't have to reduce insulin. This is some of the narrative I see in my social feed. Like, you got to control insulin. Whoa, easy now. We're meant to peacefully coexist with our hormones. We don't have to control them and eliminate them and hate them. I don't want you hating on a hormone, which I'm coming up to next because the next one on my hit list is cortisol, a hormone. So this is priming the pump to help you understand that the hormones in your body, the chemicals that your body produces, are designed to keep you alive. They're not designed to ruin your life. Insulin's not a life-ruining, fat-making hormone. It's just not working appropriately in you right now. But guess what? It wants to. Your body wants that all to work perfectly. So if we can get out of its way, start nourishing better, more appropriately, there's a meal timing thing that I think is really powerful for resolving insulin resistance. Get out of its way. Now this hormone works perfectly. You can liberate the fat that's accumulating around your midsection and it will never come back. We don't have to do this with restriction and exercise. In fact, restricting and exercising is probably the root cause of it and probably will make it worse at this point. So don't. You got to try to start freaking eating. It's time to start freaking eating, gal pals. The only way out is through. If you're really struggling with your midlife body, what you're struggling with right now has been building for at least a decade before, because nothing in your body, fat gain, fat loss, none of it happens quickly. It just seems like it. And I want to validate that it seems like it. Next on my hit list, cortisol is also not making you fat. The logic here is that cortisol is the stress hormone. So when you're stressed, your body secretes cortisol because stress, and then cortisol equals belly fat. The math is not mathing on that one. That's a illogical logic puzzle. Like, what? And we just accept it. Oh, cortisol means belly fat. Cortisol's the belly fat hormone. Oh yeah. Insulin's the fat storing hormone. Cortisol's the belly fat hormone. It's like as if our hormones are that freaking sinister. Guys, they're hormones. They're beautiful body chemicals that run all the processes of your body. They're not trying to ruin your life. I say again, stress is definitely bad. And I do think that stress is probably contributing to belly fat because your nervous system state, stressed out nervous system state, sends a signal into your brain. The environment here is a little sketchy. It's a problematic environment we're in right now. And one of the things the brain might do is some fuel hoarding, potentially just to prepare for whatever weirdness is going on. Your brain doesn't really know what's going on in your external environment. That's really your job as the human living in the external environment to bring in the appropriate inputs. And then the internal workings of your body trust you. Like, oh, I guess it's a brutal time out there just because you're chronically bathed in stress because you're a modern human living this ridiculous modern human experience, which is so different than what our ancient DNA is used to. Anywho, stress is definitely problematic for many reasons. The nervous system dysregulation you get from it, which can have metabolic impacts for sure, but also you're probably not eating well, you're probably not sleeping well, you're probably not taking care of yourself, you're probably sad. There's so many reasons why stress is not good for you, and it's not just cortisol. Stress is bad because cortisol and belly fat. It's just too dumb. To me, that language is so obtuse that it's actually embarrassing. Our bodies are not that inelegant. So here's where I think this got kind of conflated, if you will. Cortisol has a ton of jobs in your body. Cortisol has many jobs. And one thing about hormones that I always geek out on, because I'm kind of a hormone geek, is that hormones are responsive body chemicals. There's like a trigger and the hormone secretes in response to that trigger and then has work to do, right? So It's interesting to contemplate the triggers. For example, melatonin, which is a hormone, the sleep hormone, it's triggered by dimming evening light. So dim light melatonin onset. The onset of melatonin is triggered by dim light in the evening, the sun setting, the time of day. That's what triggers melatonin. Has to be a certain time of day, has to be a certain light quality. And melatonin's like, it's go time for melatonin, right? Insulin is triggered by fuel in the blood. So, insulin's like, there's some fuel in the blood, gotta go. It's just little responsive little foot soldiers that appear in the blood to deal with the thing that's shown up. And then it facilitates functions. So melatonin facilitates sleep and insulin facilitates fuel partitioning. And then we have estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, all the darlings of the menopause world right now. They also respond. Estrogen and progesterone respond to what time of month it is and how much they need to be up or down based on your fertility status. Fascinating, right? Every hormone is responding to something. And cortisol is just doing that too. Cortisol responds to many things. It responds to meal timing, it responds to circadian rhythms, it responds to stress, it responds to a lot of things. But let's focus in on the stress response. So you have a stress. Let's say you are being chased by a bear. Good old metaphorical bear. Okay, so you're being chased by a bear. Oh my God, there's a bear. You have to run away from the bear or you're dead, right? So cortisol assists in that. It picks up your stress. It picks up that you've just seen a bear and you just sent in a signal that says, uh-oh, bear. And so cortisol leaps into action. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. And it does a bunch of things. It will increase blood perfusion to your muscles so you can run faster than you've ever run before. You can climb better than you've ever climbed before. You're a superhero. It will turn off things like digestion and assimilation of nourishment because that's the last thing you need to be doing. Like, we're going to stop digesting just for a sec. We got to get out of here. But like your visual acuity, your mental acuity, you're going to be thinking like friggin' Born Identity type scenario from cortisol. It's amazing. It's designed because this bear is going to chase you. You got to get away from the bear. And you run and you climb and you can see and you're smarter than this bear because you're in human cortisol mode, stress mode, designed to save you in times of acute stress. Acute stress. So the bear, you get away from it and everything mellows out and cortisol goes back to its bunker and all your body processes come back online and we carry on with our lives. Now, in the modern human experience, we're just chronically being chased by bears. Just chronically being slowly chased by a bear all day, every day. It's not an all-out panic bear situation, although sometimes we have those too. It's a chronic bear chase. So cortisol is chronically elevated in the blood. One of the things that cortisol does when you're escaping the bear is it will dump fuel from storage into your blood so you have ample fuel to get away from the bear. So if we have a chronic elevation of cortisol, then we're chronically dumping fuel into the blood to get away from the chronic bear. It's now a chronic bear. So we have a ton of fuel stored in our body, right? We have hundreds of thousands of calories of fat stored in our body, but we also have 2,000 calories of sugar stored in our body at any given time. And the sugar is the fuel we need to run away from a bear. That's why we have it. That's why we have sugar, glucose in our body stored away. By the way, glucose also is not bad. Sugar is not going to make you fat. That's my next point. I love the segues. They're so elite. Glucose is not evil either. It's your fast fuel to run away from bears. Thank goodness we have all this sugar on board. By the way, we also have a third fuel, ketones, which is a byproduct of fat metabolism. It's also kind of a fast fuel that can help us get away from bears. But sugar is really the one we're going to lean on if it's a bear chase, because we need to dump it into the blood and get it up into the cells and go. And sugar is beautiful because it's simple and fast fuel. It's your fast fuel. You need fast fuel when you're running away from a bear. Right now, we put this sugar dumping into the chronic bear chase paradigm. So now we're just dribbling sugar out of storage constantly. We have more sugar in the blood, even if you're eating a low sugar diet because you're avoiding sugar, but you're chronically bathed in stress, you have a little bit more sugar in your body than you think you do. You're like, I don't understand why I'm gaining weight. I'm not eating sugar. Well, you're dumping a little sugar into your body by being a chronically stressed out person. Then insulin has to respond to the sugar in your blood because that's what insulin's job is. Insulin responds to fuel in the blood. Now, if we have a lot of sugar and insulin in the blood, we're kind of like making the cells a little insulin resistant because it's just a little noisy. The cells are like, why is it constantly insulin and sugar up in here? It starts to kind of shut the doors a little bit. So we're facilitating a little insulin resistance. And insulin resistance, as I mentioned earlier, one of the symptoms of it is we start to insidiously store fat on our body around the midsection. So yeah, cortisol did that, but it didn't. Cortisol did that, but it didn't. The chronic stressors in your life kicked off that cascade of cortisol, chronic cortisol secretion, the chronic little dribbling of sugar into the blood, the little bit of insulin resistance that picks up over time. And it's not cortisol's fault. Cortisol is doing what it's doing. The root cause of this is, why are you chronically bathing yourself in stress? Now, first of all, that's the human experience. We are very mismatched from the traditional experience of stress, which is life is pretty easy and then it gets very stressful, and then it's pretty easy and then it gets really stressful. That acute stressor was how our DNA was programmed. We were not programmed to be constantly worried about everything all the time and freaking out about everything all the time, and to be living in a tumultuous era and looking at phones and being stressed out by how difficult the world is and how we don't measure up. And you wouldn't believe the things that probably are triggering this chronic cortisol response in our body could be things like worrying about your belly fat obsessively. I believe this to my core. If women stopped worrying about their bodies, they would be mellowing out their cortisol response. And then that would probably reduce the amount of sugar that's being dumped into their blood and reduce the secretion of insulin, which would probably resolve some of that insulin resistance, and then you could lose some weight. If you quit worrying about how freaking fat you were, you might actually lose weight. But there's a lot of reasons why we have this chronic cortisol experience in the blood. It's just that it's not cortisol's fault. So the last thing I want you to do is go get your cortisol tested. First of all, going to the doctor is pretty stressful, so your cortisol is probably going to go up. I don't know. I hate getting my blood drawn, so cortisol probably goes up. I'm getting stuck with needles, cortisol. But also, generally speaking, hormones are fluctuating. They're either up or down, depending on what's going on, by design. By design. That's what they do. So if you go get your blood tested and it's like cortisol's high or cortisol's low, that's literally a moment in time that doesn't tell you a big picture story. But what ends up happening is you're going to take that information and make health judgment calls on it. Oh, I'm high cortisol. You'll say, oh yeah, I would, but I'm high cortisol. I can't lose weight. I'm high cortisol. You're fluctuating cortisol. We're all fluctuating cortisol. If your cortisol is chronically high, well, first of all, there's no blood test. You'd have to be chronically testing your blood. You'd have to have a continuous cortisol monitor. Maybe they'll invent one of those, a continuous cortisol monitor you can stick on the back of your arm. I don't know why we need to quantify that. Just solve for the chronic stresses in your life. I just made that sound really easy. That's not easy. But I want you to be realistic about what's really going on here, because what you're going to do is buy an anti-cortisol supplement. Cortisol booster, cortisol lower, I'm low cortisol, I'm high cortisol, I'm high when I'm supposed to be low, I'm low when I'm supposed to be high. None of that makes any sense. None of that language makes any sense. Your body is responding to inputs. It's dynamic. This is a dynamic, complex system we're living in, and hormones are the dynamic body chemicals that facilitate all the processes in our body. It's always high and low, high and low, high and low, ideally. Cortisol is not specifically making you fat. There's a downstream effect where chronic secretion of cortisol inappropriately can lead to some insulin resistance and belly fat. The root cause is not your dysregulated cortisol, it's the stressors in your life. And I do believe that regulating your nervous system is a really cool hack. Really cool hack. I want to give you some actions here. The root cause is my brain is perceiving that the world sucks right now. Because it does a little bit. There's some bright spots. It's not all bad. So what can you do to send safe signals into your brain? At least occasionally, right? So I'm a staunch advocate of resting. I rest. Every day of my busy day of life, I push away from my desk, I push away from my obligations, and I go rest. And it literally might be 7 minutes or 9 minutes or 13 minutes. I push away and I go rest. And that rest is not a nap. It is just mental rest. I just bringing my mental energy down to a gentle baseline so that my body knows, oh, it's not all bad. Oh, we have moments here where everything's okay. If I do that periodically throughout my busy work day, my body will start to believe like, oh, this isn't bad. This is fine. She's fine. She's fine. And it will reduce maybe that sort of chronic cortisol dribble, shall we say. I think resting is awesome. Yeah, you could do meditation. You could totally take up a meditation practice. I find I'd probably get stressed out by that because I wouldn't do it well enough. I don't know. I feel like we can get really stressed out about how stressed out we are. We get stressed out by how stressed out we are. We get stressed out that we're not doing enough. I didn't get enough steps today. I don't look good anymore. I've got wrinkles now. I'm stressed out because of this. I'm stressed out because of that. I'm stressed out because of my cortisol. We're just chronically stressing about dumb things we don't need to be stressing about. Can you just relax? I'm asking you to relax because I know that you have actual obligations in your life that you can't just turn off. You can't just stop caring about all the things that need to be cared about in your life, but you can find 7 minutes in your day to just come down to a restful sort of parasympathetic nervous system state. And I think if we start practicing dropping into these quiet, resting nervous system states, it can send back into the body a little pattern interrupt. Like, hey, it's not all stress out here. There's some quiet times too. And I think that can pattern interrupt the chronic trickle of cortisol in the bloodstream. So cortisol is not by itself making you fat. There's a downstream consequence that could contribute to some belly fat, but the root cause is your nervous system dysregulation. And the solution is not whatever damn supplement you get served on your Facebook feed. If you see a cortisol balancing supplement, run. That is fake. I have such a low opinion on supplements generally, but that is actually cashing in on your fear or belief or the current narrative in the zeitgeist that cortisol is this evil hormone that makes belly fat, as though that's its job. Cortisol is not making you fat. Sugar is also not making you fat. I want to acknowledge that I'm being like a little maybe clickbaity with my language here, okay? But you already clicked. I mean, I'm not being clickbaity. You already clicked. You're listening. So the click has clicked. We're in it now. But here's what I mean by that. I'll talk to women on the phone. I'll say, tell me about your life. Tell me about how you eat. Tell me about how you live. Tell me about all the things that might be contributing to this weight struggle you're having. And they'll say, maybe I'm eating too much sugar. And I'm looking at their day of eating and it's like, no, what do you mean? Well, fruit. The salad dressing I use has like a 0.5 gram of sugar in it. I put a teaspoon of sugar in my coffee sometimes. Should I switch to honey instead? All of this sugar narrative says one thing to me. You're utterly confused by sugar. There's no way that the 0.5 grams of sugar in the salad dressing that you're putting on your lame salad is making you fat. Or if you switch the teaspoon of sugar in your coffee to honey instead, it's the same thing. It's still sugar. It doesn't matter. It's not the problem. The problem isn't these little grams of sugar here and there. The problem is believing that there's some quick fix like a sugar detox that's going to help you just lose weight. And I've even seen this in women's groups that I belong to online. Somebody will come in and say, I really need to lose 20 pounds. And a person will say, I cut out all sugar and it worked. And I'm thinking, how did you do that? What do you mean you cut out all sugar? What do you mean by that? Because when I think of sugar, I think about it metabolically. Do you mean carbohydrate? Did you stop eating carbs? Is that what you mean? Or did you stop eating candy? Or what are we talking about here? I don't even know what that means. I'm a nutritionist and I have no idea what it means when somebody says, I've cut out all sugar in my diet. Because I think about it biochemically. You mean glucose? But I also think about it colloquially. Like, do you mean candy? I don't know. I don't know what people mean. Are you not eating ketchup anymore? Are you skipping barbecue sauce? I don't get it. How do you live a life with no sugar? I don't even know how you do it. I mean, I don't have a sweet tooth. I'm not a candy eater, but I certainly consume sugar in my healthy diet in the form of carbohydrate, which breaks down into sugar. It could be potatoes. It could be raspberries. It could be carrots. I'm definitely consuming sugar. And I don't want a body that can't use sugar. I want a body that can use sugar just in case I have to run away from a bear. My body's going to need to know how to actually get sugar into the cells and use sugar when I am confronted with a proper acute stressor. I need my body to know how to use sugar. I don't want my body to forget that sugar exists. It's one of your 3 fuels: sugar, fat, and ketones. They're all good. They're all so good. Reducing sugar. Okay, if you're eating bags of candy all day long, definitely stop doing that. But you know what? You didn't need a nutritionist to tell you that. That's kind of common sense. But if you think all sugar is bad, everything that breaks down into a sugar in your blood is bad, that's actually really dysfunctional to believe. And I don't want you to believe that. Because I have clients who are deep into my program, weeks and months into my program, still saying, is it okay if I eat fruit? I'd be like, of course it's okay if you eat fruit. Yes, why wouldn't it be okay to eat fruit? If we consume tons of sugar, tons and tons of sugar, like you're objectively aware that you're eating donuts and toaster strudels and candy and cake and pie and ice cream. If you're eating a diet like that, you already know it's not a good diet and you need to change it. But having that kind of a diet, a very high sugar diet, would contribute to fat because you'd be overfilling your blood with sugar. The cells can only take so much, so insulin's going to do what it's going to do, and it's going to take that sugar and convert it to fat, store it on your body. So yeah, high sugar diet will definitely cause you to gain fat. Honestly, the women I'm talking to never eat like that, and I never did either. I became pre-diabetic eating lean chicken breasts and egg whites and steamed carrots and brown rice and, eating 7 meals a day like a bodybuilder. I wouldn't touch a big gulp. I wasn't eating Big Macs. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. I was a very hyper-vigilant little Gen X girly. There's no way in hell you'd catch me eating candy. Most women are like me. We're not eating a lot of sugar. Women think they're so naughty. Well, sometimes I get a little bingy with the sugar and I'll say, take me through it. Tell me. They're like, well, I made cookies the other day and I had 4. I'm like, do you do that every day? Do you do that 10 times a day? It's fine. Like the things we do occasionally are not the factors that are creating stuck body fat on you. Occasional little sugar moments. Oh, Christmas. Oh, my birthday cake. No, it's what we do consistently and throughout the day that really contributes to the sort of state of our metabolic health and whether or not our body is using or storing fat. And having a cookie or 4 cookies for that matter in that moment is not creating a long-term fat storage pattern. Is what we do consistently. I'm never going to die on this hill. I'm never going to die on the sugar hill. If you say, is it my sugar intake that's making me fat? I'm probably going to say no. I doubt it. I doubt it. Is sugar evil? Is sugar addictive? Is it more addictive than cocaine? What? What a weird thing to say. We're talking about humans having occasional cookies for the most part. Like, why are we talking about cocaine? That just took a big leap. To be honest with you, a lot of women that I speak to self-identify as sugar addicts. They'll tell me I'm addicted to sugar. And I really want to know, like, did the doctor tell you that? Did you go to a rehab? I think using the word addiction with sugar is a little troublesome. First of all, I do believe what the research shows, which is that it can be as addictive or more addictive than cocaine. You probably heard about that mouse study they did where the mice were given either sugar or cocaine and they went for the sugar. They like to party. So yeah, it has addictive properties. I just don't think women that I'm speaking to who are holding down jobs and caring for families and high functioning members of society are junkies addicted to sugar. It's not true. You like sugar, it's yummy. Your brain is wired to want it. If it's there, the fresh baked cookies on the counter, yeah, you're going to eat it. That doesn't mean you're an addict. That just means you're a human with ancient DNA wired for survival. And sugar specifically is such an important fuel for bear chases that when we see it or know it's in our midst, we will go for it. It can feel a little mindless. I will acknowledge that. It can feel a little mindless, like I just started eating the candy and then I couldn't stop. It's like, that's not a defect of your character. That's your DNA. You're wired to not want to stop eating that. You're wired to binge on the honey hive when you find it. When our hunter-gatherer ancestors came across the honey, they didn't moderate it. They binged on it because they didn't know if they were going to find another one of those. And they're like, this is very storable fuel. We should just eat it all right now and store it on our bodies. It's easier to store fuel on your body than back at camp, because if you store food back at camp, some other predator is going to come and eat it. So ancient humans just ate everything we could find so we could store it on our body. Amazing, fascinating, really. But your ancient DNA is really wired to binge on honey, in a manner of speaking, metaphorical honey. You're not an addict because your brain wants you to eat sugar. That's how your brain is wired. Now, if you want to eat less sugar, I'm talking like candy, cookies, cake, ice cream, that's probably a great move for your health. Like, probably a really good move for your health. Hi, I'm a nutritionist. You shouldn't eat as much cake, or you should probably eat less ice cream. I don't know. A really good approach to that is to just not have it in your house. Because if it's in your house, again, your brain will be like, we should go get some of that. It's really hard. Do you think you have no willpower? This is not a case of willpower. You're not going to out-willpower your biology. Your brain is wired to want to binge on that sugar. If it knows it's there, there's a really high likelihood you might just overdo it. Some people are really good. I'm pretty good at moderating because I'm just so always well fed at all times that I don't feel hungry or naughty. So I can really coexist with cookies and ice cream, no problem. But that might not be you just yet. So in that case, I think, well, could you get it out of the house? Just don't have it in the house. Instead, let's relegate that to the category of treats. And a treat is, by definition, something that is out of the ordinary and enjoyed fully. Out of the ordinary and enjoyed fully. So having Oreos in the pantry going stale, or some freezer-burnt ice cream in the freezer, that's not exactly out of the ordinary. That's become now part of your groceries. You're buying groceries, you're buying the giant bag of chocolate almond bark from Costco, a bag the size of a human torso. We really need that. and now you're just noshing and nibbling on it all day long. It's not really in treat category now. It's sort of made its way into groceries territory, which is a little weird. What if instead you said, hey fam, let's go to the great ice cream shop down the road and get some beautiful ice cream, a triple scoop Fridays, whatever it is. Have birthday cake on your birthday, but don't keep cake in the house. I'm not saying you have to do it, but like if you're really mad about how much you feel like you're addicted to sugar, then just try getting it out of the house and voila, your addiction has just resolved itself. People will often push back on this and say, yeah, but my family, the kids, I have to have cookies for the kids. I don't understand that logic, but okay. Children don't need cookies. I know that you want to have your kids have a really just totally free relationship with food. I totally love that. I feel very strongly about that you don't want your kids to feel restricted. But I'm not saying restrict, I'm just saying teach them the art of the treat. Let's go freaking have a treat. Let's go get some fresh baked gooey cookies from the bakery and have these beautiful cookies whenever we want. They just don't end up in the grocery cart. This to me seems really logical, but I get some pushback on it, so I'm open to that. I'll take whatever pushback you want to give me on that, but I think it's possible to teach your kids to have a great relationship with food without having cookies in the pantry. And quite honestly, watching mom binge on cookies and then berate herself and then eat salads for 3 days and then, go do 2 spin classes a day because she ate cookies, I don't know if that's really sending a really beautiful relationship with food message to your kids at all. We have to think bigger picture. I think when I reflect back on this whole riff, I feel for women. I love women and I love us. And I think we've had it pretty rough in terms of understanding our bodies and understanding our basic human needs. We've really swept them under the rug for a long time, and we think we're some defective character because we have cravings or because we have cortisol or because we go through menopause. You're a human having a human experience. It's your birthright to understand how your body works and to maybe lean into some appreciation for it. Yeah, to me, that's kind of the underlying message of this. I'm not really here to specifically call out menopause, cortisol, or sugar as dumb wellness platitudes that we've been programmed to believe are the root cause of our problems. I think the bigger issue is that we're seeking a root cause of our problems. We're like, what is the flaw? What is the problem? What is the thing I need to fix in myself, the defect I need to repair? And instead, I want you to just appreciate that this beautiful biology you're walking around is actually pretty perfect and cool. And maybe if you just understand it a little bit and accept it, then we don't have to seek out these one-off reasons or excuses why we're not happy and healthy. Think bigger picture.